since the election in the US has been seemingly changing his mind, moving towards the right, talking to more and more right-wing people. Both he and Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks uh, seem to be having some sort of change of heart, and it's not really clear if it's because, you know, part of the thing that they like to do is also annoy parts of the left and not just the right. But is it genuine? And and what does it mean? We're going to talk about that today. I think we might have different views on this, but I haven't spoken to my fellow panelists on this, so I don't know. But yeah, welcome to the reality show. I'm joined by Michael, Marco, and Richard. And this episode, like every episode of the reality show this month, is sponsored by A Black Hole in Economics, Money Creation and Its Consequences, the new book by Jim Brown, which you can find on Amazon. There's a link in the chat and in the description. All royalties from sales of that book go to the Ayn Rand Centre UK. So if this is a New York Times #1 bestseller, then we will have the kind of funding that will pretty much end all the trouble in the world, or at least much of it. So consider buying that book. Yeah, Michael, initial thoughts on what we've seen from Cenk. We're going to show a clip later of him talking. But yeah, what do you make of it as of now?
Well, I won't. I don't like to talk about people's motivations, and because I think it's usually not decipherable. But and we'll get into that a little bit today. But on the surface of it, it looks like there might be somebody who's becoming a little bit more rational. It may be due to the fact that the Republicans have taken the House, Senate, and presidency and have a conservative-leaning Supreme Court. But it may also be that there's a recognition that there are some rather simple things that anybody with a fourth grade education would say and believe that usually the Democrats, in my opinion, have come out against. You know, things like putting illegal immigrants in jail, especially illegal immigrants who are criminals in jail, where a lot of Democrats seem to think that they should be allowed to roam the streets and commit more crimes. So maybe he's moving over. I don't know. But it's good to see acknowledgement. The second thing I'll just say real quick is Elon Musk is one of the most innovative, creative, amazing people of our time. You can say whether you like him or not. Really, anybody's opinion of him is irrelevant. The fact is that the man has created amazing companies, a lot of which are actually more important to the left than the right, especially Tesla. But don't forget, he also had Solar City, which was one of the major solar companies in America early on, before it was the hip thing to do. And he's just been such a powerhouse, and he's actually put up a lot of crap. So it's nice to see people listening to a guy that's obviously done a lot of great things.
Ginger says in the chat, I'm really ignorant here. Would someone mind telling me who Cenk is and what is his context? So first of all, I'm not a fan of the expression ignorance is bliss, but I can kind of see it apply here. And I would also suggest after this show, if you want to find out who Cenk is in kind of the least bad way that you can go down the rabbit hole of past shows on ARCUK UK about him. We've covered him quite a few times. Yeah, and I'm guessing this is not the last time either. Marco.
Yeah, well, I don't know Cenk very well myself, so I'm with Ginger there. The only stuff I know about him because we discussed, seen video on the show, and I can definitely tell you he's a despicable individual. It doesn't. I don't believe for a second he subscribed to anything that comes from the Republican camp, but he's there's lots of bandwagonism going on now. People jump on issues because it suits them. And this guy is definitely an opportunist. So something sounds good, sounds reachable, and kind of has the same goal that he has. He's going to go behind it. As somebody said, to stop somebody in the back, you have to go behind them first. So That could be a motivation for him. As Michael mentioned, I don't know what the motivation is. Don't even care what the motivation is. But you can be sure that if Cenk says something, it's not a genuine article. So time will tell. But nothing good will come out of this. That's for sure.
Yeah. And you're lucky, Ginger, to because I think the clip we're going to show is not Cenk in the usual mode that we've covered him in this channel, where he's normally in full performance anger mode, looking like he's just sat on a surprise object. This time he's actually at least talking coherently, so that is a step up. But you asked at the beginning of the show, Razi, whether it was genuine and what it means. Well, I don't think it's genuine, and I don't think it means anything.
Well, so some people go to a restaurant and tell the waiter, surprise me. I don't, but I did ask Daniel to surprise me with a clip, so I don't know what's in that clip. I have seen some of what Cenk has been saying in the past few days, and one thing that he has repeated in a few places is that he wants to go to Elon and say, look, cut Pentagon funding, put me in charge of cutting Pentagon funding. Now, this is not new. This is not a change of anything. There's one thing that the left loves to cut spending on, or two things. That's police and defense. Like, anything that will save innocent people from those who will do them harm, they are happy to cut. So I don't count this as him being, all of a sudden fiscally responsible or something. This is just this is the same stuff that we've heard from them in the past. Now, I will also say, Cenk, is a Bernie Sanders supporter, and he's not the first Bernie Sanders supporter to be okay with Trump, and that's not an accident either, because what the Republican and remember this, people, the fact that the Democrats put up a worse option than Trump doesn't mean that Trump is God's gift to humanity. Much of what Trump has made the American right resembles Bernie Sanders. And so that too, I don't think is certainly on economics. So that I don't think is that far out there. But let's actually, if my fellow panelists want to disagree with me on that, let me go another round. Michael, your thoughts on any of that?
Well, I mean, the fact that, I think we've gone from philosophy to practicality. The fact that the Pentagon has failed 7 audits over the last 7 or more years, and with the kind of budgets they have, it's just unacceptable, period. I mean, if any of us fail audits, we get taxed more, we get threatened with jail, or we get our wages garnished. I mean, so in that sense, I understand they need to look into the Pentagon. I think also none of us in America, at least I don't believe we're getting what we're paying for. If you see what Israel can do on a budget that's minuscule compared to what we're doing, and if you also hear about the DEI crap going on in the military in America, and we don't know, whether it's 1% or 4% or whatever, but none of us really feel like we're getting $860 billion worth of protection from the Pentagon, especially because, for example, the Houthis are running around doing whatever they want, and America is doing nothing. So I think there does need to be an accounting, and I think there's a double whammy. I think there's a double effect here, hopefully with more scrutiny and actually more deliverables over there, and also watching their bottom line. Last point I'll make is, though, that I absolutely believe that the state's primary goal, primary reason, raison d'etre, right, the reason for existence, is to protect its people. And anything that any politician does to reduce protection, and frankly, the entire Democratic Party would have us all put up with criminals and crime and illegal immigrants and obviously terrorists running around the world, preferably not attacking us too much, but a little bit is okay. Never mind the gangs in America. That kind of stuff is absolutely a no-go for me, and we need to fund whatever it takes. But more importantly, we need to get the leaders in place to do it, to put a stop to all that.
French accent was particularly impressive. Also, it turns out we might not disagree as much as I thought, but let's hear from Marco and Richard, who may prove otherwise.
Yeah, I don't really agree with the statement that Bernie Sanders agrees with Trump. Happens to agree on a couple of wacko policies which have gone which has got nothing to do with republicanism or capitalism. So of course Bernie Sanders will jump on the bandwagon, but the whole point that also Cenk wants to get his fat fingers in the Pentagon and cutting stuff. It's not because he's interested in making things more efficient, making taxpayers' buck go further. It's just because you want to dismantle certain structures, i.e., probably defense support for Israel, the little that America has been doing, and so he's got his own agenda. He wants to get a foot in the door in order to push the kind of stuff that he's been pushing for the last year and a half. So I wouldn't expect anything good coming from him being involved. But just because from the outside it looks that they are agreeing with some of the policies of Trump, it doesn't mean that they agree with Trump at all. I mean, Trump doesn't agree with himself, and we've seen that the conservatives in America, way back from the 80s, are moving further away from capitalism as such. They're becoming more statist, they're becoming more socialist, and when you have a bunch of people that support the state, support intervention of the state, they see like a government-funded organization which is supposed to side on the side of consumer versus the industries. I mean, they see all this as good. Capitalism see all this as bad because it intervenes in the relationship between producer and consumer in terms of they telling you what the term of your relationship should be. And this is not capitalism. This is mixed economy. This is coercion. This is socialism.
Yeah. And I totally agree with what Michael just said there, particularly the reference to Israel, because I think that's what's front and foremost in Cenk's mind when he's visualizing what the Pentagon is. So if he got his hands on it, he'd be cutting everything that affected Israel at all, or was any beneficial move that the US made in terms of helping Israel with its defense, which is absolutely essential, of course, to maintain. And of course, I think he'd also be perfectly happy with making the US a weaker country, and reducing, the ability for the US to defend itself and to have such a big, strong military would fit perfectly with that. So I think that, there's no change there. And he would love to get his hands on it. So I think when Musk replies to him, "Well, tell me what your ideas are," it's actually, well, reveal your true colors. Give me some actual suggestions, because without that, it's total pie in the sky, and it's totally fitting with his attitude up until now. I think all of the references to Trump and to MAGA and all that are just Cenk trying to stay relevant, suddenly finding that the other party is now in charge.
So just quickly, Mary says, I must have said something wrong. I cannot comment on videos, but I can still chat. Nothing wrong from our perspective. If there's an issue with commenting, it's not, we haven't banned you. Let's put it that way. So it must be a YouTube thing. WUB says, I really don't get that nobody wants to discipline the Houthis more. Yeah, that is one of the most surprising things about the past year. And I wonder if the fact that in the last week or so, they've fired several drones and missiles at Israel. Michael, do you want to give us an update on what exactly happened today, if you know?
Yeah. I mean, Tel Aviv shut down today. The airport shut down for an hour, which every other country, America, this would be 3 days and all kinds of political scheming and talk shows and talking heads and crap. I mean, Israel shut down for an hour because apparently this ballistic missile was taken out before the missile came into Israeli territory. But, these things are going super fast. And when you hit them really fast and the whole thing pops and explodes, they're large pieces of shrapnel. I think they had one that was 6 meters in the past. I'm not sure. We don't know today. That can fly all over. And so they want people in missile shelters because they don't want anybody getting hurt from that. That was today. Now, I suspect that Israel has said they're going to exact a heavy price on the Houthis. Joe Biden got credit for moving another aircraft carrier into the Middle East yesterday, or was moving it. You know, the few have moved in and moved out. These guys are all on tour. I mean, we don't use our actual military in America anymore. We just use it to defend and catch a few Iranian missiles. And I'm saying that cynically, but I think factually. I mean, the fact that the Houthis are still controlling shipping for the world is a disgrace. And if I were Elon Musk, I would say, what the heck are you doing? I do want to comment, and I'm hopeful. I agree with everybody that this guy is not trying to do anything good for the world. The investment in Israel to fight America's proxy wars, because at the end of the day, it's death to America that Iran is chanting. That's the golden egg. That's what everybody wants in the crazies Ayatollah's world. And frankly, there's plenty of Islamic militant groups that all want America to disappear. And investing in Israel to do your dirty work so you don't have to deal with the baloney at home about fake genocide and so on is actually a very good use of money. And it's ironic. It's ironic that a guy is appealing to the Doge, the DOGE. I don't know how they're pronouncing it, Doge or Doge or something group, the Department of Government Efficiency, the new one, to do this, and they need to look into it. I think that the Houthis are a great example of a completely failed and impotent Biden-Blinken foreign policy. There's no other way to put it. These people are mosquitoes. They're a joke. And you could go in there and in one run, and I suspect Israel's going to come pretty close this time, because I think shutting down the airport in Tel Aviv is a no-no. That is just, they understand that the economy will go to shit. It's already a problem because nobody wants to fly to Tel Aviv. So I hope we're going to see a real response, but it won't be from America. It'll be from Israel, and it will take care of a lot of the shipping problems, hopefully, if they do a great job.
Yeah, I also, and I wouldn't have said this a few months ago, but I am also expecting Israel to do something, and something more impressive than the previous strikes. Yeah, but look, what we can also expect is that if that happens, Biden will condemn it and then take credit for whatever success comes out of it. Thank you, Equal to Reality, for being a YouTube member for 31 months. That is, I'm always impressed that we've had YouTube membership for that long. He says, Doge is pronounced Doge. Is that? I don't know. I don't even know how to read it. Isn't it pronounced just Doge?
I believe so. I
Marco
don't think it's
Richard?
doggy.
What?
I don't think it's doggy. I think it is
Yeah.
Doge.
No, I don't Doge. I've heard Doge, but we'll have to see when it comes out. Yep.
Anyway, maybe Cenk will tell us in this clip. Yeah, let's hear a little bit from him and yeah, see if he is really a changed man.
I believe that before the election. I believe it after the election. I haven't changed a single policy position. I haven't changed a single opinion. Okay. So, but what that comes from, Tim, is that tweet is a genuine feeling that I had. And it's interesting because a lot of our viewers agreed with me. Okay. And so the feeling is, wait, that's weird. I really didn't want Trump to win. Not like, yay, I wanted Trump to win the day after he won. No, I didn't want him to win. Right. But so why do I feel this strange feeling of optimism, right? And I'm not optimistic about most of his picks. I'm not optimistic about most of his policies, etc. Certainly not the people who he surrounds himself with. But what I realized, and that's why I say it in the middle of the tweet, I know now. I figured it out. And what it is we, especially on the left, you're in an establishment prison, okay? So the minute you step out the guardrail, away from the guardrails, intruder alert, right? And so, how dare you say that it's the donors, you conspiracy theorists? How dare you say the politicians aren't honest? How dare you say that about Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden? Well, now the how dare yous sound hollow. They sound like, no. You guys are the morons who lost many times. So you don't get to say how dare you anymore, right? So that feeling of liberty.
Let's pause here, although I don't know how much there is left of this, but let's pause here anyway. Oh, okay, Daniel says there's 15 seconds, so let's listen to the rest.
separation within the left, within the Democratic Party, is what's critical. And the fact that we're no longer in a strictly left-right spectrum, that we're in a populist establishment spectrum layered on. Those are all incredibly hopeful things.
Right. Yeah, he did sound kind of calm at the beginning. He brought a little bit of his Cenkness at some point, but this wasn't, he didn't go full Cenk as one of our episodes about him was titled. And yeah, there is one thing that's not unique to Cenk in the left in the U.S. is that there is anger at the Democratic Party that was not expressed before the election because you don't want to do that and ruin their chances. But yeah, they many didn't like, first of all, the fact that Biden was pushed on people while the Democrats knew that he's not he's not fully there, uh, and then replaced with Kamala without she was basically anointed. So yeah, people are not too happy with the left, with the Democrats on the left. Daniel tells me that in his case he was talking about it before. Yeah, he also ran for president, right? But yeah, in some senses with Cenk, it does seem like he's getting closer. It's one thing to be angry. It's one thing to be on the left and angry with the Democrats, and it's another thing to talk to the other side, which is very much frowned upon in the left in the U.S. and elsewhere. Michael.
Well, my problem with most of these people, including this guy, is that what they fail to ever do is to enunciate a foundational philosophy where they believe, and I think that's why we all don't trust him, because you can't wake up one day and come up and there's a new problem or an older problem with new variables and just decide this is what I've decided. You have to start with basic principles, and you have to see where they would lead you. When and I hate to be such a history buff, but it served us well with many great leaders. Lincoln, when he gave the Gettysburg Address, and he was talking about things, he started with, the 7 years ago, a new nation that was conceived in liberty. That's a philosophy, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Not all men are equal. They're created equal. What he meant was in the eyes of the law. That's philosophy. And that was the beginning of his speech. And it led to what came subsequently, which was not really just the defense of keeping together America, but it was to do two things: get rid of slavery and to preserve democracy, and to actually give a democracy that included people who were from Africa and other places who were enslaved. And luckily that led to the emergence of finally it was the abolition and so on. But my point is, and Ronald Reagan used to give speeches where there was actually some philosophy. And what we don't see from any of these talking heads, almost any of them, is fundamental principles that are very simple. Because if you start with fundamental principles, you can't end up saying that a person who commits a crime on somebody, a criminal that hurts somebody, deserves to go free. You can't. Because if you start with liberty and believe that someone has the right to liberty and someone else just took that away from them, then the state needs to intervene, and so on and so forth. So this guy, like you said, he's blowing in the wind. The wind changed its direction. And now he's, got beautiful words that come from nowhere.
Marco. Michael, what are you're muted right now. What are you saying?
Yeah, no, Marco, we're just waiting.
Oh. Well, no, it's quite, I mean, I feel like I had a stroke. You first hear Lincoln's word, then cut to Cenk yogurt. I mean, this is too much. I mean, what has he said for 2 minutes? He's talked, and all he said, I had a feeling. Wow, now we're sorted, aren't we? I mean, as Michael said, these people, I mean, the problem with America right now, that even conservatives, I mean, it's not just America, unfortunately, conservatives all across the world, all the people that come out for capitalism, they're actually not supporting capitalism. They're saying capitalism is the practical system. It's not. It's not just a practical system. It's the only moral system. It's the answer to the question, is a human being a sovereign individual? Have I got the right to pursue my own happiness? Capitalism is a system that does that from a moral point of view. If you understand what a human being is, if you understand what he needs to survive, you will get to the point that where capitalism is the only system that allows the human being to thrive. Everything else is just noise. Everything else is just different version of mixed economies, statism, socialism. It's forced, introduced in the relationship between human beings who choose to trade with each other. Capitalism requires freedom as the basis to exist in the first place. That's why it's the moral system. But no one that supports capitalism understands this and makes this point. And so we all accept that the state intervention is good. We all accept the certain things that the state does. The state should only be there, as Michael said earlier on, to defend people, to make sure that individual freedoms are not broken by other people, whether from outside with the army or within inside with crime, and therefore you need a police. And everything else, as I said, is noise. Everything else is designed to distract. And people like Cenk is effectively making a point, I'm against the establishment. Yes, because you're not part of that particular gang and you want to be with the mob that will tell people how to live their life. You want to use the force of the state. You want to be a friend of the state so you can use its force, its threat to control other people. That's ultimately what these power-hungry people are after.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it comes across particularly ridiculous coming from the way Cenk's wording it there, because up until a few weeks ago, he was saying, along with all the other lefties, that Trump is Hitler. Trump means the end of democracy. But now he's got a feeling that it's not going to be it's better than I thought it was going to be. I mean, really? I mean, it just goes to prove that that was hyperbole on steroids, wasn't it? So the next piece of performance hyperbole is also to be distrusted for a similar reason. And because it's got no rational foundation whatsoever to it. I mean, he's just trying to reposition himself. He's realized that come the 5th of November, he was on the wrong horse. He's not a shifting horse, but he's suddenly realized that the donkey he was riding has just collapsed to its knees. So now he's got to work out how to reposition himself. I mean, and when he's talking about Biden, yes, he was absolutely right. We could all see that, except that the major establishment lefties, if you want to call them that, the major establishment at the time, everybody could see that Biden was, what was going on in his brain. To quote Blackadder, you could see that, the wheel was still turning, but the hamster is dead. And to be honest, he was right to say they needed to drop Biden, but that's where it ends, isn't it? That's where the wisdom ends. But I mean, anybody watching Biden function or cease to function could spot that one. So, some insight.
Yeah, a lot of the people we talk about on the shows here are where the wisdom ends, but Jim Brown's new book is where the wisdom begins in many ways. Richard, do you want to tell us more about it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's called A Black Hole in Economics, Money Creation and Its Consequences. And not only does a black hole in economics flip on its head what we thought we knew about money creation, it reveals the consequences of turning the modern financial system into a government planning agency. And Jim Brown cuts through the complexity of money creation with remarkable clarity. He exposes the truth about the harmful effects of government in money creation, its involvement in money creation, and arms the individual investor against its worst effects. It is brilliant and vital reading, and I absolutely recommend you read it. And if you want to read a longer review than the one I've just given, then you really should check out the Substack, because I've written on the ARCUK Substack, and available for everybody to read is a full review of Jim's excellent book. And so please check it out and definitely buy a copy.
Yeah, that review was just published today, and yeah, it is not behind a paywall. Most of the stuff on Substack is behind a paywall, but this can be read by everyone, and there's going to be a link in the chat in the description. And of course, you can, after you finish reading that, subscribe to the get a paid subscription, and then you can read the stuff that is behind a paywall as well, which also includes a couple of articles by Richard and many more to come. Thank
And
you,
one thing
Larry.
sorry, just to chip in there, one thing to mention, we do have a video talking all about it on the video section of ARCUK, an advert which also tells you, Jim in his own words describing the book. So please check that out as well. Sorry, Rusty.
Thank you, Larry, for the super chat. Larry says, couldn't send my message in a super chat, but I can't see it in a non-super chat either. So if you want to text it to me, I will read it, assuming it's, doesn't include stuff that we'd rather not read, but I assume it won't. There were a few comments here in the chat that I also wanted to read, but I can't right now find them, so I will go to Michael.
Well, I think it just follows on from what we said. It would be great if we could get some leaders in to come back to basic American and Western foundational principles. Be great across the world, and it would simplify everything. One of the problems with the establishment, including this gentleman here, whose name I refuse to learn because he's not worth it, to be blunt. But I read 5 or 6 things before today's discussion, and I'm prepared to talk about it. We need people who are going to go back to the fundamental successful principles that led, as Marco so nicely said, to the foundations of Western democracies. And I keep challenging people. I do it on LinkedIn usually. Somebody give me an example of a non-Westernized country that has contributed substantially to the progress in the world to make people's lives better. I occasionally get a private note saying, well, the Japanese gave us sushi. Literally, that's the level of, and by the way, they gave us sushi before, when they were under the emperor, and when they westernized, they also continue to give us great sushi. So that's literally the level of contribution we've had. Now, I'm not saying other cultures need to go away, but I'm saying they either need to adopt Western principles or leave us alone. But what is unacceptable is for anyone to support a culture that is a disaster, that is despicable, that is a failure, where 90% of the population, if not more, does not flourish, which are all the things that the West and the many of the liberals and the college students are supporting, this globalize the intifada, go Hamas, blah, 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 and a lot of this new oppressed and so on, oppressed versus oppressor thinking. And we need to get away, shun them. Because as Marco and Richard have said, and I completely agree, you can't get away with half-truths. You can't have a little bit of this. As soon as you start to whittle it away, it becomes a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. Suddenly you're paying 80% of your income in taxes to people who are squandering it. And they're telling you how to live your life. And that is unacceptable, especially when our lives in the West, and I'm talking about Western Europe and America, have been so successful in giving the world so many benefits. And yet everybody on the college campus, or a lot of the people in humanities on the college campus, seem to love the complete failures. And that needs to stop. And this gentleman that we have here is just a fly-by-night, whatever way whatever way the wind is flying, and he's there. I agree, he doesn't want to help the world. Helping Israel will only help the world. It's very clear. And they'll do a far better job. And by the way, we did the same thing against ISIS, finally, but quietly in America. We killed a lot of civilians. And nobody complained about it. And the reason is because America is allowed to do it at once, and people better shut up. But Israel is not. And no matter how despicable the people we kill in Israel, we still get we still get criticized. So I think this is really all linked to philosophy and consistency, and why this gentleman still has a following. Well, a fool and his money are easily parted, and people are willing to follow anything. It's a bit crazy.
and his ideas are more compatible with kind of the underlying philosophy in the culture, certainly much more than ours, which is why he has, 1,000 times our views or so. But we'll get there, hopefully. I see there's a whole conversation in the chat about how to pronounce Doge, but it's all in written form, and I don't know how to pronounce even the way people say it should be pronounced. So I'm going to leave that. We're not going to get into a conversation about how to pronounce Cenk. Also, I don't know if you try to pronounce it like it should be pronounced in Turkish, if that's cultural appropriation. So let's move on. Starhopper says, he's not screaming and turning purple. I missed the drama already. Look, this is one clip. Don't worry. He still needs to eat. So, he will do the things that made him famous. Daniel says, if you cut too much from the pentagon, it might become the rectangle. Um, and Larry's comment that YouTube didn't like. America funding the war efforts of Israel and Ukraine is restitution for our supporting, appeasing, and justifying the regimes in Russia and Iran. I don't know if I would like to. I don't like thinking of it that way. I mean, it's not restitution. I mean, America, supports sometimes countries that it should, sometimes countries that it shouldn't. It certainly appeases its enemies, as Israel does, even when it has the support of America. So, no, American foreign policy should be, a foreign policy that puts, I don't want to say America first because it has a bad connotation nowadays. But yeah, it should be a policy of national security. And it is in America's interest for Israel to be strong and for Israel's enemies to be weak, which is why, we had that whole thing where Biden, after a year of condemning Israel, of telling Israel not to do what it had to do, he's taking credit for the successes of Israel because he understands that that is actually a good thing despite what he has been pushing for the past year. Michael.
I have to make a quick smart-ass comment because I think it's important. Remember, we had the Pentagon reduced to a rectangle. That was on 9/11. One of the walls of the Pentagon was destroyed. And it's exactly the same mentality that our college students are jumping around raving about how great it is that led to that. So let's all remember that when we're thinking about whether Israel should take out Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis and so on and so forth.
Marco.
Yeah. First of all, I don't want to spoil the fun on the chat, but it's an acronym, so it's DOGE, assuming that's the final name they choose. So let's sort it out.
You party pooper.
And about America first. Well, I don't think it's got a bad connotation at all because America is the only country built on a moral foundation, on the fact that the country, the state, the government is designed to protect individual freedom and allow people to operate freely. So if we had America first for real, that would be a good thing. The fact that it's been used for other reasons, a bit less philosophical perhaps and moral, it's a different issue. But I don't I don't see anything wrong with saying American first. And again, yeah, going back to Michael and talking about Cenk, it's the underlying thinking of the people he's trying to get involved with is the same as the world, as the whole culture. It's again, it's thinking that the state is a good thing. The more state intervention will help people, when it's exactly the opposite. The more state you have, the more your freedom are curtailed. The more you have mobs of people vying for the power that the state can wield, trying to get support from one politician or the other, and then, as Ayn Rand mentioned, you got this kind of warfare between interest groups, people who want to have advantage over another group, and that's exactly the problem. If you have the state which has too much power, people will try to appropriate or at least gain favor of it. And the answer, again, is a small state. It's a state that just does the minimum essential for a legitimate state to do, i.e. protect the individual, and the rest is left to the individual to deal with. That's the only way you're gonna get rid of all these factions, these market distortion, this unfairness, all the monopolies and the problem you have with the Pentagon. If you have certain lobbies they are successful in buying for funding, it's because, again, the state has got the money, has got the power to wield and decide who has the best weapons, who has the best supplies, even though they're not actually the best supplies, but they are the supplies pushed by a lobby. So if you allow the government to have say in matters of money, of course you will distort the market, you create inefficiencies. And the answer is not to get rid of the ability of the state to defend its own people, but it's to get rid of the distorting issue, which is the government interfering with people, people dealing with each other. And that's what the issue is.
And I think Cenk has been talking about lobby groups quite a lot. And the idea that he wants to, get rid of lobby groups, always on the right, always talking about the conservative lobby groups, not recognizing that charities are one of the major left-wing lobby groups, all of those left-wing think tanks. And of course, the state itself is such a left-wing lobby group. It's built into the state that the state wants more statism and it's lobbying to grow itself. So you don't need to get rid of lobby groups. You just need to restrict the state to those key functions of courts, police, and defense of the nation from foreign attacker, which is precisely why going towards the Pentagon as your first point of cutting is completely ludicrous. But I did see him talking about Bernie Sanders as well, and Bernie Sanders was talking about where he supposedly agreed with Trump. Now, as we said before, you don't exactly know which of the ragbag of policies Trump is actually going to follow through on, certainly when he gets into position, certainly when he hears from his staff. But this idea of limiting credit card debt, credit card capping interest rates at 10%, for example, and also the stuff with RFK, if he manages to make it over the hurdle of being appointed, about this stuff about reducing processed food and food dyes in the food industry. Now all of that is all about it's about personal responsibility, isn't it? It's not for the government to limit the credit card companies. Credit card companies are going to go bust if people they lend money to end up going bankrupt and not returning the debt. So you don't need the government to step in. And when it's talking about the obesity epidemic and the processed food stuff, they're talking about diabetes there, and they're talking again about personal responsibility. The state isn't there to save you, to give you a way of evading reality, because you avoided your personal responsibility of looking after your own health and your own spending. So the fact that Cenk agrees with Bernie, who supposedly agrees with Trump on all this, it's neither here nor there. But what Cenk was saying on these subjects is that's great. I'll and he used the phrase "take the win." I'll compromise. I'll take the win because he loves compromise, doesn't he? He loves if the right is going to compromise because they're surrendering their principles. So just like in the same way, like Hamas or the EU do, they bank every concession and then ask for more. So it's and that's what he's doing here. He's saying, okay, great, they've surrendered that principle, great, we'll accept that, double thumbs up, and we want more. We also want you to intervene on this and more state on that. So I mean that's coherent with his whole argument he's been making even prior to November the 5th and realizing he lost.
We haven't done the episode about the credit card thing yet, right?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, well that will come at some point because that's a very interesting policy which very clearly rewards people who misuse credit cards and punishes those who use them properly, as well as punishing the credit card companies. And yeah, it's not a surprise that this is something Bernie wants to work with the Trump administration on. I want to quickly just say the ARC UK awards for 2024 take place next Monday. We're doing it a bit earlier this year. If you haven't seen past award shows, look them up. They're fun. We are going throughout this week to live stream a few more production meetings, membership benefit of the Inner Circle YouTube membership is that you get to see the Monday production meeting live streamed. We're going to do a few more of those, and that is going to be the topic. Sorry, the topic of those production meetings, where we are going to discuss the categories, the nominees, and then a few days before the show, we will send out to members and YouTube members the categories and nominees so you can vote in advance. People who are not members can vote live during the show. So make sure you tune into that and consider becoming an Inner Circle member so you can take part in the conversation and help shape the award show. You know, Israel is going to be an interesting issue here. Yeah, the first, I don't know if this is the first episode we did about Cenk, but one that went viral actually became at the time the most watched show on the channel for like a few days. Was the Cenk Who Cried Genocide, the episode we did on Christmas Eve of last year. We know how to celebrate Christmas. And most of the shows, or all the shows we've done about Cenk, are about his obsessive support for the genocidal maniacs that he claims are victims of genocide. And that's going to be interesting. I mean, if you're going to be okay with Trump, and Trump is going to be supportive of Israel, which I still think is an if, but I expect him to be supportive of Israel, then I wonder if that's one of the things that Cenk will say, well, we can agree to disagree on that, and let's work together on other things. Michael, what do you think is going to happen with that?
Look, I think, that Trump has put people around him that'll be dealing with the Middle East that are some of the most pro, if not the most pro-Israel people ever. And whether it's because you're a Christian like Mike Huckabee and you're a devout and fundamentalist Christian and you don't want the Muslims in Jerusalem, at some point, at this point, I don't care. He's got his son-in-law back in the game, not quite as prominent, but certainly in the game. He's got the people he's surrounded himself, for the most part, are law and order. Don't mess around. The adults are back in town. And I think a lot of people in America, by the way, feel the way our guy we're talking about today feels, which is a relief that we finally got some, as crazy as Trump is, we finally got some people who are common sense adults that don't want to put up telling you that 1 + 1 is 4. And I do believe Trump is going to be pro-Israel. I think he really despises terrorists. I think he remembers what happened. The guy's from New York. He remembers 9/11, unlike this generation of Americans who, of course, was never taught about 9/11 because it's an uncomfortable subject that might offend some people. And I actually think things will go well for Israel. I think they're already starting to go well. I think you're seeing Hamas all of a sudden decided to give up on its idea that Israel was going to leave Gaza in order to have a ceasefire. I personally don't think there should be a ceasefire. I think there should be complete annihilation of Hamas. I also don't think Netanyahu has the guts to actually withstand this baloney that's being perpetrated. But I do believe that, like Hezbollah, that Hamas will violate the ceasefire and Israel will end up coming back and having to continue destroying Hamas. But I think Trump is already having an effect, a good one.
Marco.
Yeah, definitely. And the fact that one of the signal, by modern signal, was actually a message that Trump sent to Hamas, return the hostages or they will be hell to pay. I'm sure he didn't just use it as a trading gambit, to be honest. And I'm pretty sure that the Houthis, they're gonna regret what they've been doing for the last year. Whether it's part of the wider strategy that he wants to use in order to move on to Iran, with the excuse that Houthis are just an emanation of Iran or not, it's a different issue. That's you need intelligence, you need much more information for that. But either way, I don't think Iran and the Houthis will have much longer to crawl around. Hopefully, they're going to be hit seriously hard. And Trump, of course, is signaled the fact that he doesn't want Iran to develop the nuclear stuff. And at the same time, Iran has been saying, "Oh, we doubled up on the production." Whether they are positioning each other for some sort of agreement, Trump tells Iran, pipe down, disappear in your box while I'm around, while I'm in town, because I'm not gonna tolerate your behavior. Either way, whatever the situation is, it's promising for Iran. Sorry, from Israel. It's not going to be the kind of half-assed support that we've seen from the US until now. It's going to be a proper statement that you step out of line again, you're going to be pounded. Unfortunately, this kind of behavior, we know that generates only a few years of peace. But if you go down the route of disabling Iran once and for all, and stopping those regime from destabilizing the area and making sure that Israel doesn't get attacked every other year or every couple of years, that would be the only way of sorting it out. Of course, now we also have the unknown about Syria. But yeah, things look promising.
Michael, I know you have to leave. Any parting
Sorry.
thoughts, and where can people find you?
No, I think we said it well. I'll leave it to the guys. Sorry, I have to run. Kaufman 2Fs on LinkedIn. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. And yeah, Richard.
Yeah. I mean, this gets to the point that the mortal enemy is Islamicism. But we've been talking about Cenk, and I never thought I'd willingly say this phrase, but let's get back to Cenk for a second. He was talking about the mortal enemy is the establishment, because he's positioning himself as being, anti-establishment, or at least he's not part of the lefty establishment, because he's deigned to criticize them from time to time, such as when they should have dropped Biden earlier, and the fact that they lost. So he's saying the mortal enemy is the establishment. But of course, the establishment is one of those words, one of those nebulous phrases that sort of floats around and allows you to package under it whatever you want it to mean. Now, I tried to look up a few definitions that help sort of build a picture of what it can mean to different people. It can mean the existing power structure, but of course, power is, again, one of those nebulous terms that kind of floats around and can package together a whole bunch of stuff. So, and depends on who you think the power is with. And then, of course, one of the definitions I came up with was it's what's conventional, the conventional social, politics, and economic principles of a society which anti-establishment views oppose. So it's defined by what people oppose it for. Those that oppose it are against whatever it is, and that is what defines it. So, I mean, that's a hopeless definition and a hopeless understanding of what it is. What it really means is, who knows what it really means? It just means you're anti at the moment who's in charge, and you want your own agenda, your own tribalist agenda, and you're bunched together with a whole bunch of other tribes if it goes against the tribe of who's currently got the power, whether that's the media, whether that's the economics, whether that's the actual politicians. And of course, I'm sure he also thinks that the establishment is run by the Jews, because they all think that, don't they?
Vered says in the chat, 35 more days, and adds an emoji party thingy. I don't know what it's called. Yeah, some people in this channel, on this channel, are much more optimistic about Trump and have much more of a favorable view than others. I put myself in the latter category, but I think 100% of people certainly that you see on the channel are very happy to see Biden go. So yeah, we will absolutely be celebrating the moment that Biden takes his rightful place on the ash heap of history. Enric says Gabbard and RFK are not rational and adult. Yeah, and as I said on one of the episodes, I think it was the episode where we talked about the nominations of Huckabee as ambassador to Israel and Rubio as Secretary of State. You can expect in the next 4 years on this channel, possibly on a daily basis, a day when we praise something that Trump did, and maybe a day when we praise something Trump did on TDO, and then condemn something else he did on TRS. But that will also be a shift from Biden, who I think the last thing of his that we praised was some of the rhetoric immediately after October 7th, which of course he once it actually mattered, he completely abandoned that and sided with uh, Israel's enemies. Marco, Richard, parting thoughts, and where can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you're gonna see stuff coming from the new administration, which sometimes makes sense, sometimes it doesn't, because it doesn't come from a place where they have a fixed philosophy, a rational one. So they're gonna do and say stuff that is no here nor there. But I think the important thing is that overall, America will see a shift in the sense of life towards what America should be. They're gonna leave behind this fear of white supremacy, this woke crap that's been imposed that nobody really wants, but which has been at the forefront of everything that they've been doing. So moving away from that is going to be a good thing in the first place. And then, yeah, they're going to take action. They're going to take good and bad actions. But then again, people who don't really know why they do things, who don't stick to principles, they will do that. They will come up with some mixed stuff.
And in the meantime, of course, the left it has to lick its wounds and find out what its own identity is. And at the moment, of course, that leaves a vacuum. So in this interim, people are talking up, they move across to, oh, I agree with this bit. I agree with Trump on that, because they've got nobody knows quite what the left is. I did hear that Kamala Harris is possibly considering standing for 2028, which made me laugh out loud, because none of the people who lost, a sum total of $1 billion back in her are going to go with that idea for a start. But they do need to decide who they are and what they represent, and whether they're going to abandon a lot of the divisive politics that Marco referred to there, and all of the woke stuff, whether they're going to really realize for once and for all, for the benefit of the entire world, that is an election loser and a load of old irrational nonsense that is never going to see people climb anywhere on the back of. So not long term anyway. So we'll have to see. Because once that's defined, together with how Trump actually performs in the round overall, despite the noise and bluster that's inevitably going to be a feature of his presidency, then we'll be able to make some kind of assessment. But he's not even in the job yet, so let's count down those 35 days and hope that it involves, to start with, wiping out the nuclear weapons in Iran and shifting the dial in the Middle East for a safer region, and also for the promise of the Iranian people. Not that should be the motivation, of course, but there are plenty of people in Iran who really would like to see the regime fall, along with us three.
And where can people find you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sorry, I was visualizing the fall of Iran then and distracted myself. But the Briefly Objective, the sister channel to this, if you look down below, you'll see a link to it with shorter form content taken from this. There's all the interviews and shows on this channel, and with added visuals just for extra impact, which you can add to your social media. And please help us boost it. We're heading towards that 1,000 subscriber mark, which we would like to hit. We're up in the 900s now. So please, if you haven't subscribed to it, please do so.
Visualizing the fall of Iran is a good thing to visualize. We did a couple of days ago at the Ayn Rand Centre UK Christmas party. We did a live episode of the Daily Objective in front of a live audience, the audience of the people who were at the party. We'd love to do one in Tehran. We're not going to try just now, but yeah, if there's a country in the Middle East other than Israel where that is a possible scenario, it is Iran. Gonna say something else. I don't remember what it was, but we have 2 shows tomorrow where I can say it if I do remember. Thanks, guys, for joining me. Thanks, everybody, for watching. I'm sure, as I mentioned, Cenk will be a topic again, but there are many topics, some of them less nice than others, but there are some interesting things we're going to talk about in the coming days. So make sure you tune in, and we'll see you back here tomorrow on the Daily Objective.